So here we are back in Excel, and we've looked at our data. Now we probably want to visualize it by creating some of these charts we've talked about. So the first thing I'm going to do is I'm going to look at what my revenue's been over time. That's a pretty common thing to want to look at. So I'm going to go and select the dates here. Those are the dates over which I sold stuff. And I'll just hold the Control key, and I'll also select the revenue. So I've got those two sets of data selected, and I'm going to go and insert. And I've got a variety of different types of chart here that I could use. It'll even recommend a chart for me based on what I've selected. What I'm going to do is I'm going to select a line chart here. And there we go. It's that classic kind of financial chart that shows me along the x-axis I've got my dates, and up the y-axis I've got my revenue, and it's picked up the formatting so I can see that that's in dollars. That's all very nice. Now I'll just make that a bit bigger so I can see what's going on, and I might want to change the title here to show that this is revenue over time. So my chart makes a bit of sense. And I might also want to go ahead and just add some axes titles to the chart. So we'll go ahead and add those. And I get my axes titles, so I can see that along there, we're going to make that the date. And this up here, we'll make the revenue. Quite hard to type on your side, but there we go. So I've got my chart here, and that's showing me exactly what I expected. Now it looks to me, it's difficult to tell because there's peaks and troughs, but it looks to me like there's a gradual kind of upward slope there. And what I might want to do just to bear that out is add a trend line in my chart. So I could go ahead and do that. And I get this dotted line appearing here that shows, yeah, if we look at this linearly, there's a gradual sort of trend upwards, which is kind of useful to know. And what I might want to also do with this is maybe compare revenue to something. So remember when we looked at the data earlier on, I thought there might be some relationship between temperature and revenue. So maybe, as temperature goes up, revenue also goes up. Well, let's take a look at that and see if that's potentially the case. We'll do a bit more investigation. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to go ahead, and I've got my chart selected. I am going to select the data for this chart, and I can see there's series 1 in here. Is obviously my temperature. So I'm going to add another series. So we'll just add a second series. And the second series I'm going to add, well, to get its name, I'm going to just point to the temperature column here, the heading. So it's going to pick up the name from there. And the values that I'm going to put in there, I'm going to replace this placeholder that's there with the actual temperature column. We'll go and select that column. And if I OK that, well, I've now got one series called temperature and one called series 1. So that series name is potentially a bit confusing. So I'm just going to edit that as well and point that at the revenue title cell so that I can easily see I've got one series of revenue, one series of temperature, and OK to that. And now I get my temperature appearing. It actually looks like a relatively flat line, if I'm honest. So maybe my idea there was a correlation isn't borne out by this chart. But what I've now got, of course, on the chart are these two different colors, and I'm not really sure what they represent. So I'll go ahead and I'll add a legend to my chart. And it also picks up the fact that I've got my linear trend line there as well. So I add that legend into here, and should be able to close that. There we go, click away from it. And I've got my legend telling me that the blue line is the revenue and the orange line is the temperature. So line chart, pretty useful for that type of data.
And to your point about maybe there's not a correlation just looking at this graph or this chart, keep in mind that temperature is on a different scale than your prices, and so it's actually moving in a much narrower range. So this might be a good example where you might want to normalize your data in some way so you can get a more accurate picture of what's really going on. But more importantly, there are statistics that will ultimately be able to tell you if there's a relationship between the two.
That's exactly right. And all the things we said earlier on about the scaling of the data, it really becomes important when you start plotting multiple things on the same chart, because if there are different scales, then visually they'll look very different when you try and compare them. Okay, so we've kind of dealt with revenue over time. Let's have a look at some other types of data that we might want to look at. And I might be interested in the sales of lemonade and orangeade over time. So maybe we want to look at that. So again, we'll just select our dates. We've got selected there. Oh, we missed. Oh no, we got the first one. There we go. And I want my lemonade and my orangeade as well. So we'll just control, and I'll just select both of those columns like that. So now we're plotting over time my lemon and orange sales. And we'll use a different type of chart this time, I think. So we'll just insert a column chart. And I'm going to go with one of these, what we call a clustered column chart. And we'll just move the this one out of the way and focus on this one, I think. Make that a bit bigger. So I'm looking at flavors over time. Remember that I'm in America, so there's no U in flavors. Yeah. So we've got our flavors over time, and I can see a different color. It's automatically put the legend, and unfortunately it's picked up Series 1, Series 2, so I probably want to do something about that. But I can see that I'm getting a different color of column for each of the different flavors. So let's go and sort out that problem with the legends there. We'll just go back into our select data. Our Series 1 data, well, I can see if I go and edit that, it's looking in column D. Well, column D is the lemon, so we'll just go and pick up the heading from column D. And we'll do the same with Series 2. And this one's from column E, so we'll pick up the heading from column E. And that changes my legend down here. So now I can clearly see that I'm comparing lemons and oranges, which is better than comparing apples and oranges, I guess. So I'm looking at my clustered column chart. I've got my title in there. What I might want to do is I can see, obviously, I can compare side-by-side sales of lemons and oranges, and that in itself is quite useful. But it's quite difficult to kind of judge total sales now, you know, looking at it that way. So if I wanted to view it slightly differently, what I could maybe do is go and change that chart type so that instead of being a clustered column chart, I might make it a stacked column chart. And what I actually get then are the height of the column indicates the total sales, and it's broken down into the different colors, and I can like hover over and see the different values within there. So even within one type of chart, a column chart, there are different variants that show you different types of information that might be useful ways of working with your data. Okay, so from column charts to something that's perhaps a little more contentious, I think some of the data scientists in the room might be rolling their eyes a little bit, but it will keep the marketing people happy. We're going to select these the average numbers of lemons and oranges, or lemonades and orangeades that we've sold, and we're going to insert a pie chart. Just to make it interesting, we'll make it 3D. And you can see that immediately it doesn't look quite right. So the reason for that is, up until now, we've been selecting columns of data, and that's what we've been charting, and that's kind of the default. Here we've actually selected data along the way. We've selected a row of data. So the values are left to right in this case instead of top to bottom. So the chart doesn't look right because it's trying to plot it as if it were columns. And what we're going to do is just switch the row and column over. And now we get a pie chart as we probably know it. And I can do all the usual things. I could add a title in here. So we could add the title here that is flavors, average sales, average sales. And I could go and I could change the series names and so on as well. You get the idea. Pie charts are one of these things. I mean, look, coming at this as a statistician, this is probably not something you use a lot.
I almost never use this, actually.
Yeah. I think that's the case. I think in most kind of data science type roles, pie charts are very limited, but they're very commonly used in kind of marketing organizations or where you want to show comparative sales, typically is the type of thing you do. So it's worth knowing that you can create those in Excel. We're not going to worry too much about them anymore in this course, or indeed really any of the other courses in this series, but it's worth knowing that you can create those.
Because you might be asked to do it.
Indeed. Yeah, indeed. Can you show me that as a pie chart? It's got a common request. Okay, so we've seen that we've got a pie chart. Now I'm going to look at something that is commonly used when we're looking at a sort of data science world, and that's a scatter plot chart, where we're going to look at plots on a map that compare two different values. And this is really commonly used to find correlations between different data values. So we're going to do it very simply. We're going to do it with our number of leaflets that we've distributed, which we've got here. So I'm just going to select those. And then the number of sales on a given day. So let's go and select the number of sales. So we've got our two columns selected here. And again, we're just going to go and insert a chart. And the chart we're going to create is a scatter chart. So we'll just go ahead and just choose the first of those. And what we've got here is our sales versus leaflets. And the thing we're looking at, you can kind of see, again, there's very few data points here, and that's a really important thing to think about as well. We're working with a very limited sample data set here just to make things manageable for the demos. But even within that data set, we can see there's kind of some structure here. This looks arguably like a sort of diagonal line, and we can see the data are kind of clustered around that line. So as you get more and more data to add to your data set and plot, if you start to see structure like that, then that's usually an indication of some sort of relationship between the data when we're plotting it like that. So that's a really useful chart when it comes to that associative type of question that we talked about earlier on. All right, well, I've looked at a few chart types there that are pretty common in your usual sort of business analysis world, if you like, or at least business users analyzing data. But we're starting now, we looked at scatter plots, we start to get into that more data science, statistical sort of world, and that's really your world. So what are some of the other chart types that as a data scientist or a statistician I might be interested in looking at? There's
two that are kind of, I think, are particularly important when we start looking and visualizing data. The first is the histogram. So why don't I walk you through how we actually do that? And we'll look at the histogram looking at leaflets. All right, let's take a look at this with the leaflets data. So we have to highlight the data that we're interested in. We'll do that, and then we'll go into Insert. We'll select our chart type, histogram. Ta-da! It's easy as that, easy peasy. So this is actually broken into 4 bins, as we call it, but you can actually be more creative and get a little bit finer insight into what's going on in your data. And the reason why we do this is because we really want to understand the shape of the data. And this is important from a statistical perspective because almost all of the statistics we use assume a normal distribution. So with the histogram, we can get a finer look into what the shape of our data is.
So what I'm looking at, before we change the bins, what I'm looking at here then, if I understand this, bins is really a way of sort of lumping different values together into categories, if you like. And exactly. I've got, what I'm seeing here is 4 columns that show me the number of instances where the first one, the value was between 75 and 100, the second one between 100 and 125. So it's basically just created those kind of categorical ranges of values and said how many of each one there are. Is that right?
Absolutely. And what's really cool is Excel did it for you automatically. Back in the old days, we used to have to count up between 75 and 100. How many days did I have leaflets like that, and so on. And so it was a lot of manual work.
Okay.
All right, so let's take a look at how we might actually change the bin width. And so to do that, we're going to highlight the axis that we care about, which is our x-axis here. And then we're going to click Format Axis, and up pops our options. Now, you could do this by bin width, or I'm actually just kind of curious to do it by the number of bins, and I'm going to increase this to 10, because that seems like a pretty good distribution to give me a look at what's going on and what this data is actually shaped like. So we'll change it to 10. And ta-da, it actually goes ahead and makes those changes for us. And so we can see now that the bins range from 75 to 85, 85 to 95, 95 to 105, and so on. We actually don't have any days where we actually had 155 to 165 delivered or put out. So that bin is empty. But you can see now what the shape of this data actually looks like. And we're going to talk a little bit more about this when we talked about the introduction to statistics, about kind of what this shape might represent in terms of, is this normal or not? But we actually can start to get a feel for how close to normal our data actually is. So that is the histogram.
Fantastic. Now, you said that histogram was one of 2 types of chart that I might be interested in from a kind of more statistical perspective. What was the other one you had in mind?
It's the box and whisker chart, a favorite of many because it's got a great name for starters.
Yeah.
So let's actually do this with and compare our sales of lemonades and orangeades. So just like we have been doing in the past, I'm going to go ahead and I'm going to highlight the cells that I care about and to include into my charts. So we got orangeade and lemonade. I'm going to go to Insert. I'm going to click on, it's actually in the same area, same option list as the histogram. So you see box and whisker. So that is the cool chart that we have here. Now, of course, which one is which, we don't know. So we're going to click on the little plus sign, and we're going to have it do a legend so we can see which of these 2 data points is captured by each of the colors. So lemon is the blue box, and orange is the orange box. Did that happen naturally? That's kind of ironic and cool at the same time. So we have our box and whisker chart that shows us the range with which the data for each of these variables. So what you have here in the traditional box and whisker is the blue box in the middle. That X is the median.
Okay.
The top of the box represents the third quartile, and the bottom of the box represents the first quartile. So it's showing you that where most of the data should be clustering, and then the whiskers show you out to the maximum value and the minimum value.
So I'm seeing almost the outliers, I guess, at the ends of the whiskers.
Yeah, if they are considered outliers. Yeah. They may or may not be, depending on the shape and distribution of your data. But the whole idea here is it's giving you a visual representation in a slightly different way of where your data lies.
So I can see that the median for my lemon is the blue one. It's kind of a shame it isn't actually yellow, but the blue one represents the lemonade. I can see that the median is higher than it is for the orange, which we kind of knew because we'd looked at those values earlier on. But I can see a little bit about the distribution around the median as well. I can see there's a slightly larger range of values for lemon than there is for orange.
Right. So it's a little bit more. There's a little more variability in our lemon data than in our orange data. And what's interesting about this particular chart is that you can see that there is some overlap in the values across these two variables. So it's not like they're distinctly different. In other words, what could happen is looks like there's a difference. Certainly the medians tell us that there's a different number of lemonades and orangeades being sold. But the real question is it statistically significant? Is it meaningful? And if these two boxes and their whiskers were completely separated, there was no overlap, you probably wouldn't even need to do the statistics to know that they're statistically different. But there is an overlap. So the question is, what statistics can we use or should we run to actually understand if the difference between those two averages is statistically significant or meaningful?
Right. So in this case, it's not like I'm selling a gazillion lemonades and 5 orangeades. They're kind of close to each other, but I'm going to have to apply some statistical methods to get deeper into what the differences are.
Yep.
Great.